Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. Okay, so we are rolling. Welcome to Face to Face, and it is actually this is going to be our first interview for 2014. Believe it or not, our first posted interview, and we've got a special guest with us today, as often they are. He's a writer, a director. He's an award-winning filmmaker. His films have appeared all over the world at film festivals, on TV screens globally. He's, as I said, he's an award-winning filmmaker, and he's got a new film coming out in the next couple of days, February 6th, called Art Machine. You're going to be able to find it on iTunes. We're going to have all that information for you, and there's going to be some selected screenings happening in LA and New York. Doug, thanks for joining us today. Doug Karr.
Thanks so much for having me, David. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, no, I'm Doug. I am really looking forward to this interview. I think we're gonna touch on a whole lot of material, including your filmmaking. So
perfect.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Art Machine. I think we should probably start with that. I know it was you guys raised some money through Kickstarter, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And I bet a lot of the listeners would too, especially some of the budding young filmmakers.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Art Machine is an independent film that we did initially raise the seed capital from a Kickstarter campaign. We raised a little over $25,000 on there, and that also kind of opened up the possibilities in terms of more funding. We already had some investors lined up before that, but we met some new ones and got some exciting people involved through their kind of not gaining knowledge of the film through that. So it did indeed help us to raise the full budget, which was quite a bit more than that initial.
It wasn't just about the actual cash in hand. This was about connections as well and relationships that were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a real awareness raiser, and it kind of, it's like anything in life. You tell people you're doing something, and you tell them when you're doing it, and suddenly people start to respond. But before that point, no one really takes you all that seriously. So every time I've made a film, it's always been this thing of like, all right, we're going to set this impossible deadline, and then we're going to meet it. And people start getting excited about it, and lo and behold, the snowball runs downhill, and suddenly you've got a massive endeavor that's going.
Right, and you're wondering why you ever got started in the first place.
Yeah, and that you wonder for years.
So when you were so this is, I mean, you've got quite a few films in your back pocket. What, maybe 10, 8, 9?
Yeah, somewhere in there. Between all the documentaries and short films and TV stuff.
With great names, by the way. Straitjacket Lottery, Anniversary Present, 10 for Grandpa, Art Machine, all great names.
Thank you.
When you were, I don't know if you actually typed in the info for the Kickstarter campaign and hit submit. Did you or your team or your partners, did you think you were going to raise the $25,000?
I don't know. I mean, yes and no. It was always one of those things of like, because with Kickstarter you don't get the money if you don't raise it all.
That's right.
So
yeah.
We basically just decided we had to, by hook or by crook. So we got everyone involved and had a great team kind of running the campaign and really pushed and people got pretty excited about it. This is my first feature, and it's a story that I think people can really kind of get behind. It's the story of a child prodigy painter who, when the film begins, he's 6 years old and he's slaying it, and he's just everything he sells is turning to gold. But the film actually gets going when he's 17, and he's sort of like staring down the barrel of having to be a known quantity as an artist in the adult world, and everything starts to fall apart, and he really has to kind of figure out who he wants to be while dealing with a bipolar disorder and all kinds of elements, and gets in with a crowd of outsider artists in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and starts to kind of like turn in a completely new and out there direction. So
sounds kind of like you've just described the life of Miley Cyrus. I think I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's some parallels to some people right around that age, and also people from my life who've dealt with different chemical imbalances and brushes with success at young ages that have kind of shifted their whole way of being. And so, yeah.
Speaking of chemical imbalances, I mean, just, who knows what the full story is, but the whole Philip Seymour Hoffman thing, I mean, is pretty tragic story. I mean, in light of
it's awful. Yeah.
In light of what's happened there, is the film a little is it timely?
I mean, I think people who have incredible creative abilities often have all kinds of other things going on that can be both incredibly helpful to them as human beings and also incredibly devastating. And I think Philip Seymour Hoffman, it's pretty clear, was a genius. What wasn't so clear was that the sort of like demons he was wrestling with were probably wrapped up in that in some ways. It's a complete tragedy. Every time I think about it, it makes me just so sad to think of what an amazing person he was, and the incredible performances that we won't get now from this amazing person. But I mean, I think it does dovetail to some extent to Declan Truss, the main character in this film, just on the level that it's like dealing with talent, incredible talent is I think it's a tricky one on that level in terms of brain chemistry and the way people relate to you and everything else.
His films, I mean, I think, you could go back and what I know, and I don't know his whole filmography, but I've certainly seen lots of his movies over the years, and he always seemed to have, there was always kind of, at the risk of sounding like a moron.
Always fair.
Yeah, that's right. It did seem like, though, that there was this broken kind of edge to a lot of the characters that he played, and almost gut-wrenching in a sense. And I mean, I certainly resonated with that kind of melancholic side to him, or whatever you want to call it, that bipolar side, or that or that medicated side.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely I gravitate towards a kind of storytelling that he was excelled at, and it really when it's done well, it's incredibly exciting. And I think something that he did so well was that he really personalized people that you wouldn't really want to get too close with, and going through the types of things that they're going through in the stories he told. And I think that's one thing that's so amazing about the film medium and storytelling in general, which is that we all sort of like want to push away things that seem kind of uncomfortable and nasty and not what we want to be going through in our lives. But when you're watching something on screen and it's got that edge and it's really doing it well, it can be incredibly compelling. So
I want to talk about that a little bit, Doug. What do you do with the person who says, and maybe you don't do anything with them, but I just and I don't want to be trite at this point, but I just want to be entertained. I really don't go to the movies to get depressed, or I don't go to the movies I don't want reality. I want a Hunger Games kind of like approach, or a bad grandpa like approach,
Sure.
And it's interesting. Last night I was watching some TV with my wife Elizabeth, and it reminded me of an old Tim Robbins film, got to be 25 years old. Adrian Lyne, I think, Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, I love that film.
I know. So I dug up a review by Roger Ebert. It's got to be, 20, 25 years old. And the last line was kind of something to the effect of, I really didn't enjoy this film, but you still need to see it. Because and I want to ask you,
because someday you're going to be in the Bardo.
Right. Well, so,
no, it's true. I mean,
well, what do you do with that? What do you do with that as an artist, as a filmmaker, as somebody who's obviously trying to entertain people, probably, but also at the same time trying to speak to some issue or a question that you've raised? How do you answer that?
Well, I mean, I guess the sort of that's a very pertinent question, because the industry as a whole, and I think just entertainment as a medium, has progressively gone further and further in that direction, where the celebrated aspects of it are pretty consistently becoming things that have that emphasize the entertainment value and are less about substance. But on the flip side of that, which is something I try to remind myself of when I get really depressed thinking about that, is Alfred Hitchcock pretty early on said that a piece of cinema needs to be like a piece of cake. Like, you don't want to go to the cinema to eat badly boiled Brussels sprouts and be shoving unseasoned food down your throat. It's it's very true. I mean, my favorite filmmakers, we were talking about Seymour Hoffman. If you watch a P.T. Anderson film, to name one of my favorites, there is nothing in that film. Yes, it might be like slightly slower. It might have a plottingness to it, but there's no frame in that film that doesn't belong there. There's nothing in that film that isn't in some way an incredible representation of the human experience. And I think if you lose track of that, then you're going to have problems. And I work as a commercial director as well as a poor independent filmmaker. I sort of play both sides. Right now I'm directing a series of commercials for a bunch of different clothing companies and stuff like that. And honestly, those can be can be an amazing experience as well. There's all kinds of opportunities to use craft and art and create beautiful imagery and even aspects of narrative within that. But obviously, like, when you're making a film, it needs to resonate, and that's why character actors have started coming back to Philip Seymour Hoffman again. It's like character actors have a place as stars now because they can resonate. They're the real people experiencing real things is it's the reason why we sat around the campfire when we were cavemen. It's the reason why cave paintings existed, and that's never going to go away. I've seen Bad Grandpa, I've seen The Hunger Games, both of them, and maybe they're, certainly in the case of Bad Grandpa, they're not going for, high cinematic vision and trying to hit it out of the park, and that was not the best movie going experience I've had. But there's really intelligent people working on those projects, and there are aspects of those films. Take Bad Grandpa. If that was the only film the aliens saw to represent our race, that's not good.
I want to talk to that alien who's going to be writing the review. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. but that being said, there would be some insight into
true.
Into pain and suffering and delight and misfortune and all kinds of aspects of the human condition. I mean,
it's poor grammar. Yeah.
I'm reaching here.
You are reaching, Doug. But that's okay.
But what I'm saying, I think Bad Grandpa is really a tough one. But with The Hunger Games, the progression between the first one and the second one, it got better. It got more interesting, and the commercial aspects were kind of, not as important because it was already understood that it was going to be a huge success. So then they could concentrate on storytelling. The storytelling is pretty decent, And Philip Seymour Hoffman again was amazing in it. So.
Yeah, well,
there's
that's
like
what
aspects
I
of,
have.
you know.
I haven't seen either of them actually.
Yeah.
Not yet, anyway.
I mean, but that, you know, I actually think that's the exception to the rule. There's a lot of crap out there.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Unfortunately, most of it's on Netflix.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah.
And from the little exploring I've done, Canadian Netflix seems to have an even worse sampling of the worst crap that's ever been made.
Doug, I have a better film collection than Netflix does. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You have a better film collection than Netflix Canada does with a couple of old VHS tapes.
Yeah.
But that's not to say I dislike Netflix, because they've got tons of potential.
Tons of potential. It's getting better. I've seen some of the best couple of the great documentaries in the last year, and it is getting better, and it
their
original is the future.
Original programming is amazing. I just watched a new film the other night that was incredible. That was an original piece of programming that they made.
So P.T. Anderson is one of your favorite filmmakers. I mean, I think I would probably have to agree with that. He's a pretty thoughtful, reflective, methodical guy, it seems to me. I don't know him at all, but I've seen his movies and listened to him interviewed a couple of times. Is that the kind of director you want to be? Is that why you got into filmmaking? You saw Taxi Driver, at 14, and it totally changed your life. I mean, do you really, you're reaching with Bad Grandpa, but are you reaching with Art Machine? Are you reaching with, as a group of artists, are you reaching with film in general? Are you just preaching to the converted? There's about 14 questions there, Doug.
Well, I'll start with what I think was the first one.
That's right.
When I was 9 years old, my parents took me. I was born in Paris and lived there for the first 9 years of my life. And right before we left, they took me to a reissue of David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia. And that was the first time that I remember sitting in a movie theater and realizing that a group of people made this.
Right.
That there was something so incredible and mind-blowing about it. It was like, going to see a symphony. It was just something just so penetrating about the way that film was made, and seeing it in 70 millimeter, and it just highly affected my whole world. And I remember from that moment on, it was clear to me that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to, be involved in creating that kind of image and sound combination that would have an emotional impact on the audience that did to me. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of filmmakers I love. Spike Lee, Terry Gilliam, Jim Jarmusch. The list goes on and on. And even some more commercial filmmakers. Steven Spielberg's made a few films that are my favorites. But in general, I would say I lean towards filmmakers whose emphasis is on combining incredible storytelling with amazing performances for films that really have some ability to change people's way of looking at something.
So, would that fall into the definition of Hitchcock's notion of a piece of cake, or would you be maybe a piece of cake without ice cream?
No, I would say that my films, the cake comes from the incredible richness of what's there to begin with.
Yeah.
And then the icing for me is there's something that in the commercial world we talk about as packaging, which is you package visual imagery with motion graphics and incredible toolkit that we have to spice things up. And it's also all about the way that you film things and where you put the camera and how it's moving and how you're telling the story intelligently through the visual medium. And the more emphasis there can be on that, the more exciting a film I think can be. And that's anything from from laying 100 feet of dolly track to create a seamless, incredible moment where you're following behind a character as something incredible is happening, to yesterday in Miami, I had a girl on a trampoline that we were filming at 160 frames a second as she was jumping from a trampoline, and then we're going to make it look like she's landing in a swimming pool, and then we've got an underwater camera there that catches her and all. So there's sort of like seamless dance of, what often comes down to visual trickery. Don't get me wrong, but to create images that are incredibly lasting, but always in service of the story, so that they are having an emotional impact. That's really that's why I wake up in the morning. Yes, it's also because sometimes we get to blow cars up and, and things like that, but it's mainly for the former.
Speaking of blowing cars up, were you and I at one point chatting about some scene that you shot for a film that you did where you had to go late at night in some farmer's field and you turned on some headlights on a car and you were shooting with that kind of lighting, and you were in some farmer's field somewhere east of Toronto or something like that? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, and we were lighting 4-foot crosses on fire for a background plate. Out by the zoo in Toronto, for a background plate for a scene in which my actual grandfather in real life, this is for a film I made called Time for Grandpa. In real life, my grandfather did have an interview with some members of the New Jersey KKK, and we were recreating that. So we decided that outside the window there should be some KKK members with in full regalia, and that they would have giant crosses, of course, burning, because isn't that what they're always doing on a Tuesday afternoon evening? And but we couldn't figure out where to burn giant crosses without being arrested, so we decided to make some little ones and to go figure out a place. And of course, why would you get a permit to go do something like that?
Yeah. That's got a little bit of a documentary filmmaker edge to me, That's the way you get it done. You hide the camera in your jacket. You don't ask to take these pictures. You just take them.
No, exactly.
Doug, just to let people know, it's artmachine.com. Oh, is amachine.com.
It's actually artmachinemovie.com will get you to the website.
Artmachinemovie.com will get you to the website.
But if you just search for Art Machine on iTunes, you'll see, as of February 6th, you'll see the download and be able to watch it.
Tell me a little bit more about the intentionality of a filmmaker. You talk about blowing cars up and burning crosses and these different things that sound so, you talked about visual trickery, and they sound so almost contrived in a way and very calculated. And I think they are. I mean, you look at a screenplay, and it's written, right? I mean, you've got
everything is highly contrived and calculated in prep. And then you get on set, and everything is completely uncontrolled and insane. And it's this funny balance between trying to decide if what you started out, that plan that you came up with in advance, is helping or hurting you as you try to corral the insanity on set. It's an amazing thing, because as prepared as you are, you're always going to be tripping over your own preparation, and if you didn't do it, then you're really fucked. So it's like this very difficult combo where you're trying to find that line between the two.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's kind of like, it's almost kind of like a poet knowing the rules and breaking the rules. Right?
Exactly.
And I love the phrase "tripping over your preparation," because I mean, there's that old cliche about hard work is really about the prep, right? It's all about your preparation, so that you can actually do those things that you need to do, make those decisions on the fly that you need to make. And it sounds to me like that's kind of one of the many jobs of a director.
Yeah, and the more I do it, the more I can sort of I can fake it, and I can get away with not doing the prep in terms of everyone else seeming, feeling like I look prepared and I'm doing what I need to be doing to get some imagery in the can. But I know when when I'm standing on the edge of a cliff and suddenly I'm standing on air. I can tell, and it's a bad feeling, and it does happen occasionally. You're never going to be able to have the kind of peripheral vision to see everything that's going to happen in an unknown future. But the more you kind of understand what the gig is and how it's going to work in terms of like what it's going to be like on the day, what you're going to need in editorial, how the whole, and whatever your piece of the project you're trying to achieve that day is going to fit into the bigger picture. All of those things are serviced by understanding the material better. And working with great actors is an opportunity to dig into material and go deeper with it. And that's one of the things I really love about filmmaking is working with incredible actors and taking material that, if on the page it may read well, but it's not some it doesn't have the depth of feeling.
Yep.
Because screenplays are blueprints. So that's an amazing aspect of the job is kind of like finding where the sort of like stick figures turn into fully fleshed out, incredible real human beings for that moment in time, and then it goes away.
It's always amazed me what I love your line about, at 9 years old you realized a group of people made this. When you're talking about Lawrence of Arabia, and it's always astounded me how many people are really involved in the filmmaking process, and how if it's kind of like a golf shot but way more complicated, how many things have to go into it in order to get the ball in the green. And
yes.
You can have the writing, you can have the actors, you can have the director, etc., and it still might not work. And I wonder if there's, you just talked about being on a cliff in the air, that intuitive angle. I wonder if, is that what makes a great director? The ability to say, it just doesn't feel right now. And I don't mean feel in an emotional sense. I mean from a gut level, kind of tacit, indwelling knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Like this inner...
Yeah.
I don't know, Doug. I don't know if there's even a
what
question
that
here.
brings up for me is when I'm on set a lot these days because, like I said, I'm doing a ton of different projects, and when I am on set, often it's around 3 p.m, but it can happen anytime, that suddenly everything on set turns into molasses and nothing is moving and you're working on one specific thing that you're trying to achieve and the entire crew has lost all of their energy, and that can happen 10 times a day.
Right.
When it's going really badly. But usually it doesn't. Usually it happens once or twice. And those are the moments nowadays I can intuit that we're going in the wrong direction.
Right.
It's not just that we need to push a little further and it'll all come together. It's like this collective energy that everybody kind of knows that whatever's happening right now, for whatever reason, needs to either be put aside for later or we just need to shift the way we're trying to achieve it. The other day we had a camera on a raft that we were trying to shift in one direction, and I was like, you know what? Let's just take that camera off that raft. We'll put it on a jib. We're going to do this completely backwards from what we've been trying to achieve for the last 45 minutes, and then magic happens. And I think for me, it's like back in the day, I would be like, we're going to get it. We can get it like this.
Right.
This was a great idea. This is so cool. This is going to be, and then
tripping over your preparation.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I think I think there is that there is some experience stuff there that, like anything in life, the more you do something, the more you're going to be prepared for variations on it. So
it sounds to me, we talked briefly before we hit the recorder rolling. You had a short film on the bill at TIFF this past this past fall, I guess, September 2013. I can't believe we're into 2014 already.
I know, so fast, right?
Tiny Dancer, and you were mentioning that you've been given some grant money to pursue a full script for it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Basically, I made this film with an incredible group of folks in Toronto, and spearheaded by a producer named Glenn Wood, who's one of my favorite producers. Now, it was our first time working together, so that's always interesting. But it went amazingly well, and yeah, the National Screen Institute has offered me, basically I won a grant to turn the 7-minute film into a feature-length screenplay over this next year. So I'm currently in the writing of that.
And that'll be that'll be a Canadian production?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I got to tell everybody the little story. So there I was sitting with Elizabeth. We were about to, I think, see. Oh man, is it The Invisible Woman? Ray finds this new film about Charles Dickens' wife, I think, and it was quite an event. And boom, up comes. I think it was the first movie that we'd been out to see at the festival. I saw about 6 or 7 this year. And
cool, yeah,
yeah. And you not your ad, but I guess the little trailer piece about, I don't know, the 4 short films that were appearing online for the festival. Up came your film, and then your name. It was one of those great moments. I know that guy moments, It was
nice,
awesome.
Yeah.
And we were with another couple. We go every year. Yeah, it was so great. So hey, congrats on that. That's amazing. So
well, thanks. Yeah, I mean it's really exciting. I mean, it's one of the beauties of being a Canadian that you can sort of like have support from people. The Movie Central, who's putting up the money. And the National Screen Institute. It's like such a wonderful thing that the way that they're so supportive. All these people, Bravo, Fact, supported the original short film, and throughout my career, I've been so lucky to have the continued support of Canadian broadcasters and government money, and it's I've been back and forth between the states quite a lot these days, and I'm mostly in New York and spend some time in Nova Scotia and Toronto, but it's not like that in the States at all.
Well, I remember, you and I met on a small video project that you were doing for me 10 or 12 years ago, or whenever the heck it was.
Right.
I remember you at the time, the proposal writing, the pitching, just for the stuff that you were involved in then. I mean, it's a lot harder than it looks.
It is. It's definitely not free money, and it's the people who are rewarded the money do an incredible amount of work to spend it wisely for the most part,
sure.
and making some really great films, and I think the thing that has started to change as the global economy's shifted and the entertainment industry, beginning with the music industry, really starting to hurt, is I think what people used to look at the socialist countries that are giving artists money, that's crazy. Now people are starting to understand that, wait a sec, like without that, what we were talking about earlier, that it's all about commerce, and storytelling has to be commerce driven. That is the end game, because it's sure there's always going to be people who can sort of like afford to throw millions of dollars at their own stuff, but that's a whole other level of indulgence that doesn't necessarily reap great rewards of artistic merit. So yeah.
I'm sure there's a few names you could toss in there into that conversation.
Yeah, fill in the blank.
Listen, we probably have to wrap up in a couple minutes, but there's a few things I want to ask you about your frustration in the industry. You've talked a lot about the positive side and certainly about Canada, but before
I don't have any frustration.
You don't have any frustrations with the film? Yeah, you talked about Molasses on the set. What makes I mean, you know, you've talked about getting out of the bed in the morning. You sound like you're really, you know, you're still pretty passionate about this, Doug, which I think is so cool. Like you've been doing this a long time. You haven't been cynicalized. I just made that word up, you know, and I think that's cool. But I'm just wondering, what is it that gets you down about the industry? Is it that shift that we've gone back to the commercialization of film and it's all about the almighty dollar?
No, I mean, I yes, that enters into it certainly. But I mean, I think the thing that I would point to there is that there's so much being made. There's so much being made these days, and I think this is something that a lot of the sort of like senior elders in the film community are starting to point to more and more. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas just did a thing about this, and you know, that when there's this much content being created, especially on the sort of the serialized short level, there's an incredible amount of material being created with no production value, no real sort of interest in the sort of like cinematic ideals.
Right.
That stuff creates a lot of noise, and some of it is incredible and deserves praise, and a lot of it's really distracting and just filling the unbelievable amount of screens in our lives. And that makes me sad because I feel like it's difficult for a film that has some real merit, and I like to think that a film like Art Machine has real merit, to sort of shout above the din, because there's just so much being thrown at us as humans.
Doug, isn't it a bit of asset liability going on? Because I mean, that's in some ways going to drive the creative and entrepreneurial spirit, it seems to me. But at the same time, like you say, it's just going to create this I don't know, garbage bin full of content.
I mean, I think that's the thing is, like, I think the people who are being smart about it, you know, certainly on the commercial side, brands that I'm working with are starting to come around to the fact that if you just keep throwing garbage at people, they are going to tune it out.
Right.
And I think that, you know, in the film industry, distributors are starting to get wise to that fact, and have to, because there's so much out there. You know, I was having lunch the other day with a friend at who works at Sundance, and he was telling me the numbers of films, 13,000 films that came in this year, and it's just insane. Like
13,000 films at Sundance.
Yeah, well, no, that applied. Yeah,
that applied.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it's you know, those numbers are, you know, and I think maybe 9 million of those were shorts. I don't know, but it was, you know, it's an unbelievable amount of films. Wait, can it be million? It's got to be thousands.
It's got to be thousands, I would think. Millions.
What did I say?
You said 9 million, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
I won't quote you on that one.
Maybe chop that part out.
Yeah, we'll chop that part out, yeah. So just before we wrap up, I wanted to talk, so sort of coming full circle, we started with talking about Kickstarter. We're talking a little bit about the state of the business. What have you guys been doing that's kind of creative and edgy with respect to Art Machine from a social media perspective?
Yeah, well, it's that's the thing. I mean, these days, in order to sort of yell louder than anyone else, you have to do something wild and out there. So we just finished a 2.5 minute, I guess you could call it a short film. It's a piece of viral media that takes a comedic look at a famed street artist's imminent capture, and you learn something brand new about an artist that we all know and most of us, I think, really, really love, and the sort of true nature of who they are. So we spent a few days with a bunch of kids under 12. We had a dozen kids on set from 15 months to up to 12 years old, and we created this pretty out there news segment that I'll give you a link to when it's
Cool.
when it's
Sounds
done.
great. Well, we can stick that on the site for sure as well. Listen, we should probably wrap it up, and I haven't figured out a tagline for my podcast yet, Doug, but I think it's going to be something like "There's more going on than meets the eye," because every conversation I've had, and I think I'm now close to about 50 podcasts. You just feel like you just started. You've barely scratched the surface, and I feel totally that way with you. There's so much more we could touch on, but listen, just tell us just in the last minute here. It's artmachinemovie.com. Sorry, I've forgotten already.
Yeah, artmachinemovie.com.
Okay.
Art Machine Movies, one word.
Film is coming out this Friday or Thursday?
It's coming Thursday. It's coming out Thursday on iTunes VOD, and it's gonna be everywhere you can find it online. It'll be there. So
it's gonna be bigger than the
search
microchip.
for Art Machine. That's right.
Well, listen, that's great. Thanks so much for joining us, and maybe we'll. I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll chat again live, or at least podcast live. So we'll work something out for maybe the next release for Tiny Dancer. How's that sound?
That'd be great. It's so great to catch up, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on, and such a pleasure.
Thanks, Doug.